Ram Ram, Namaste, Namaskaram, Walaikum Salam, Sita Ram, and Jai Shri Ram. So today, as I promised yesterday, was the episode 3 of Rambi Allen, Girmitiyas and Leonidas in Hindi, and that presentation went really well. I had very close to 1,000 views as per this morning, and close to 50 shares by people. So today will be the English version, and I will start as of yesterday with the same scenario of the history of Rambi Island. So the history of Rambi Island was prior to 1870. It was around 1855 when the Tongans had major influence in Fiji, and there were some rebels of Tui the cow, and they actually lived on Rambi Island, and under the direction of Tui the cow then, as it has been written in some books, that he actually consulted and asked King George Tapau to go and get rid of the enemy on Rambi Island, of the rebels, and the reward was that he was going to offer Rambi Island to King George Tapau. So it was then, and then King George Tapau sold it to Captain John Hill. And then it was in 1941, the British government purchased Rambi Island from the company of the famed Lever Plantation Southwest Pacific Limited for £25,000. But the reality is that the British government did not use its own money, as they have told all over the world. Due to the phosphate on Ocean Island, they realized that one day the phosphate was going to run out. So they created what is you may call a compensation fund for the Banabans, but they actually called it a provident fund. And then the Banaban Provident Fund had more than £20,000 by about 1931. And that was the money that was used to purchase Rambi Island. So in actual fact, when you go back to that time, the 20,000 or 25,000 pounds at that time, around 1941, the British should have actually paid to purchase Rambi Island of their own money, and that 20,000 pounds of the compensation fund or the provident fund should have been given to the Rambi Islanders. That did not happen. And then when the Banabans were settled on Rambi Island, there were 3 main settlements. One was Vunisinu, the other one was Sotolu and Nuku. And then when you study about Rambi Island then, it was one of the most developed island in Fiji at that time. And according to written documentation, there was more than 110 to 120,000 coconut palms. There was some large breadfruit plantation, And also, when Captain John Hill was there, they also had 30 acres of sugarcane. So, before the Girmitiyas were taken to Rambi Island, in 1871, there's reports from Fiji Times that he actually employed more than 120 men, and these people came from Tana Island in Vanuatu. He also had people come and work for him from Solomon Islands, and he also had people come from Kiribati and Tuvalu to come and work on Rambi Island. And then, when the Land Titles Commission was set up by Sahitya Gordon, the people from Taveuni actually protested that the Rambi Island was not sold properly to Captain John Hill. And at that time, the Tui the Cow disputed this. And then it was only from a family tradition that they said that no, Tui the Cow at that time had actually given Rambi Island to King George Tapau as a gift because he had killed all the rebels on Rambi Island. And then the Tongans actually gave evidence, and then that dispute was settled. So that's when, until from there, Rambi Island was classed as freehold land. Also, when Captain John Hill had purchased the island, there were close to about 150 Fijians who were growing crops on Rambi Island. And Captain John Hill basically ordered the Fijians to leave. And after consultation with Tui the Cow, he said they could only stay till the yams were harvested, and then they needed to leave the island. And then it was in 1879 when the Girmitiyas were bought by Sahitya Gordon, and none of the plantation owners wanted to take the Girmitiyas as laborers on their plantation. It was Captain John Hill who agreed that he was going to take the Girmitiyas. And Captain John Hill took 52 men, 25 women, and 29 children while they were in quarantine on Yenuda Lai, which is a very small island of Ovalau, in between Ovalau and Talevu. Not many people in Fiji, the Fiji Indians or the Indo-Fijians, and Fiji Indians living overseas, and even the Fijians themselves in Fiji do not know that the 500 plus Girmitiyas who came on Leonidas did not actually set foot in Levuka because there was an outbreak of chicken pox, diarrhea, dysentery, and few people with cholera. They were in quarantine on the island of Yenuda Lai from 14th of May till nearly the end of August. So June, July, August. So they were in quarantine for 3 months and longer. And then Captain John Hill took them to Rambi Island in his small boats. So imagine you departed your village in a remote place near Maharajganj or Gorakhpur or Lucknow or Meerut or anywhere else and then you were taken to the depot in Calcutta, and you stayed there for about 2 or 3 months, and then you boarded Leonidas, and after about a 3.5-month passage, then you reached Yenudalailai, and then you were taken to a very small island, Rabi Island, and you were then made to work 12 to 14-hour days, 6 days a week, with no Indian or Hindu tradition or culture or the village settlements or support from relations, but you had to make a living. So the rate of pay at that time was a shilling a day for men and 9 pennies or pence for women. And those children who were under the age of 15 years, it depended on what the employer decided or what Captain John Hill decided to pay that particular young boy or young girl who had come on Leonidas. It is also written that the targets for the day or the output or the performance was set very high. So hardly any of these people were able to reach the target. And then, in a very short span of time, Rabi Island had more than 110,000 coconut palms planted on the island. Besides that, there was breadfruit plantation and jackfruit plantation. And those who may be familiar that in India before the British came, they used to harvest sugarcane and make gur, or they also made jaggery. So they probably did harvest jaggery on Rabi Island at that time. It is also said the mortality rate among the Girmitiyas was very high. And the women did not meet the target because they also had to do washing and cleaning and cooking. So they probably never got that 9 pennies a day as such. And then the island, when John Hill became older, he sold the island to lever plantations. And the lever plantation took more Girmitiyas in between the period of 1909 till 1916. Brief report says that more than 108 laborers, among them 27 women and 14 children, were taken towards the end of the Girmit era before 1916. And it is also noted that one of the last ship, or the last ship that made the voyage from Calcutta to Fiji was Sutlej 5. It also happened at one time that Captain John Hill sent about 70 to 80 Girmitiyas to Tavuni to work on the Holmhurst sugar plantation and the copra plantation. What I would also like to mention, that this voyage and research project probably just happened as God wanted me to do, or Lord Krishna. When I went to Fiji in May, I wanted to go and see the old sugar plantation remains on Tavuni. And then I made 2 documentary movies, one in Hindi and one in English. I was also able to meet a 105-year-old Girmitiya lady on the island of Tavuni. I only spent one night in Tavuni and we had to leave Tavuni at about 7 a.m. in the morning back to Navutu Bay. And when I was making the voyage, there were a couple of men who asked me who I was and where I was from and what was the reason for me to visit Tevuni. And I said I was from Australia, and though I was visiting Fiji, but my main interest was doing Girmit research. And the owner of Sun City Ferries was on the boat, and we had a chat for a little while. And he said he does remember that there were some Girmitiyas brought to Rabi Island. And I said, do you know anything more? He said, no. And that was the beginning. And when I went to Lambasa, the same day, I talked to a couple of Rabi Islanders, and they told me, yes, there are certain places on Rabi Island where Girmitiyas were shot dead by the owners of liver plantation. And then I came back to Australia and started to investigate more and research more on the Girmitiyas on Rabi Island. I also had a couple of people from Fiji who sent me some very critical information of what happened on Rabi Island. There was a manager of liver plantation who was a very notorious white person, a very evil character who was feared by everyone on Rabi Island and probably even Tevuni. And his name was Mr. Percy Lyons. Not much is written about him. It is not written deliberately because he shot between 18 to 40 Girmitiyas and took them to a couple of places on Rabi Island and asked them to dig holes of 3 to 4 feet or even 5 feet deep. And he actually shot them at the back of the head with a pistol, and they actually fell in the hole. And he had a couple of his henchmen to throw a couple of shovels of sand or soil and left them there. So it is written that the manager who was responsible to manage liver plantation was Mr. Percy Lyons. And also, so you go back to say 1890 or 1895 or 1900 or 1910, the island of Rabi used to produce 400 to 500 tons of copra. So if you convert it to kilograms, between 400,000 to 500,000 tons, 400,000 to 500,000 kilograms of copra per year for such a small island. So try to imagine the productivity of Rabi Island as a contribution to Lever Brothers at that particular time. Lever Brothers at that time ran plantations in Fiji. They used to own more than 110,000 acres of land in Solomon Islands and also certain countries in Africa. West Africa, Ghana and other countries, and also in Congo. Lever Brothers then changed their name after many years, and it is now known all over the world as Unilever. So one of the first product they made was Sunlight soap. It's still sold today. This company manufactures number of detergents and washing powder and washing liquids. So they changed their name. There are some people who boast, even Indians, that they work for Unilever, which is one of the best company in the world. I would like to inform all the viewers that Unilever made super profits for many years from the island of Rabi to the blood and sweat of the Girmitiyas. They were shot dead. I don't know how the women were treated because there is nothing written whatsoever how the women were treated on Rabi Island. If Mr. Percy Lyons was such an animal, I don't know how the Girmitiya women were treated on the island of Rabi for so many years. So, Unilever made super profits out of slavery. That is the reality of what happened to the Girmitiyas on Rabi Island. So when the Rabi Island was finally purchased by the British to settle the Banabans, the Girmitiyas of the Indians had to leave Rabi Island. Till today, we gained independence in 1970. Today is the end of 2023. There is no research done of the Girmitiyas on Rabi Island. Very sad. There was a tip of the iceberg that Brijlal had done something about the Girmitiyas on Rabi Island. So some people have told me, Rabi Islanders, that certain Girmitiyas were taken from Rabi Island, and when you catch the boat or the ferry from Navutu, which is on Vanuatu, and if you travel from Navutu jetty about 2 or 3 kilometers, there is a settlement or a Fijian village called Loa, and some Girmitiyas were taken there. The Girmitiyas worked very hard. I haven't been to that area because I did not have time. But I'm told that there is a river that flows inland and there is a valley there. And the Girmitiyas used to plant lot of rice from about 1942 onwards till about 1963 or 65 or 66. So that's when the influence of Ratu Sukunal came about in Fiji. The Indians were told to leave and they had to depart. No rice has been grown there after 1963 or 1964. So the owner of Sun City Ferries told me that there was a settlement there. His grandfather actually lived and cultivated rice, but he did not know anything more of the Girmitiyas. So the owner of Sun City Ferries, whom I'm not going to name, his probably great-grandparents came on Leonidas and settled on Rabi Island. But it is such that our history is so poor that we do not know about our ancestors. Some Girmitiyas from Rabi Island were taken to 2 large copra plantations in Natewa Bay, and also on couple of plantations if you travel from Savu Savu on the coast towards Nambowalu, or if you travel right on the coast from Savu Savu towards Wainunu Bay. They were taken to a couple of plantations there. So that's the history of the Girmitiyas on Rabi Island. So last week, I went on Google Earth and did a topographical sightseeing of Rabi Island, whether there were some copra plantation or coconut trees left. There are very few, because these coconut plantations were planted more than 100 years ago. Those coconut plantations, whether they became dead or they were damaged during cyclones, etc., were never replanted. So there's hardly any form of economy on Rabi Island. But coming to the reality of why I am doing this project, I've been told by few Rabi Islanders that on the darkest night of the full moon, they can hear the actual cries of Girmitiyas crying in Hindi to save their lives. So I've consulted some Hindu priests, some Hindu Pandits, and some Gurujis in India that what can be done. And they've told me that those remains should be dug, the skeleton remains be washed in milk and water, and they are cremated by burning them on wood, and their ashes then dispersed in the ocean. And then a havan be held on the beach in remembrance of the souls. My last trip, I had spent my own personal money, but for this project to happen, which I also intend to produce 2 documentary movies, one in Hindi and one in English, I need minimum of 20,000 Fijian dollars. I'll have to pay the Rabi Islanders to help me dig. I'll have to transport some stuff and materials to Rabi Island. That is one project. The second project, which probably not even 1% of the Fiji Indians who have lived and born in Vanuatu, they do not know that the first batch of Girmitiyas actually went to Wainunu Bay to work on David Whippy's plantation. David Whippy was one of the first American who had a major influence in Fiji politics, and was an advisor to Ratu Seri Dakambau for many years, and was also a deputy consular general for the Americans in Fiji. When the 21 houses were burnt in Levuka by the Fijians, he had 4 or 5 houses burnt to the ground, and when the final settlement happened, he was given $6,082 as compensation. He was the richest man in Fiji, even richer than the government of Fiji. His plantation produced coffee, cocoa, cotton, banana, and rice. There's nothing in Wainunu today. The land is still owned by the great-grandchildren of David Whippy. So I'm also going to do a project on that one. And that will involve also some people paddling, not even paddling, using a long mangrove stick, and during low tide to make the passage from Wainunu past Nambualu till Vunivau. So we can actually see and witness how the Girmitiyas escaped from David Whippy's plantation. So I'm actually going to appeal to my viewers and some big businessmen in Fiji like Vinod Patel, R.C. Manu Bhai, Tappus, etc., that this research is something which probably will never be done. I have a particular interest, and maybe when I die, nobody from Fiji or Fiji Indian will ever take the initiative to do such a project. I have other projects in mind, and this is still happening. It will be put on the website probably end of January or end of February, because I work full time and this is just a part-time hobby. So the first one is the death register from 1879 to 1916, but probably will go to 1920. And further analysis has to happen, because I want the number of infant deaths, men, women, whether they became sick or suffered from major illness, or they committed suicide, or women died during pregnancy, or women died after the birth of a child, because that will take some time for me to analyze and tabulate. That's the third project. The fourth project, a particular person who is now getting very close to 80 years old, after seeing my dedication and commitment to Girmitiya work, has sent me 2,600 photos during the time of David Whippy and prior to the British coming to Fiji. Then the deed of cession times, the Girmitiya times till 1920, post-Girmit from 1920 to 1970, and then post-independence 1970. And those photos will be produced in a book. And then when the book is produced and sold, then we'll be producing those photos on our website. The fourth project is the plantation register, where the names of each and every Girmitiya, how they were dispersed to the different plantations in Fiji. So there was a plantation in Gila Tavuni, where the first batch of Girmitiyas were taken after many, many months. There was a large plantation in Dosamu, north of Tailevu, or north of Natovui Jetty. There was another batch of Girmitiyas who were taken to a plantation in the inland of Vunindawa. There was also another batch of Girmitiyas who were taken into Singatoka Valley to work on J.P. Bailey's land. And then they were also taken to certain parts of Coronavia and Rewa Delta. And then the study has to flow on because Girmitiyas were taken to Wakaya Island, Motoruki, other certain islands in the Lao group. And Mr. George Gounder of Gounder Shipping in Fiji has actually put his hands up to help me go and find some of the remaining fifth generation Girmitiyas who are no longer full-blood Indians, but they have only probably 20 to 25% Indian blood in them because there was intermarriages with the Lao ones. That's another project. The other project is, which I mentioned earlier, is the Wainunu and Greater Nambawalu project, because that will take a fair bit of time. And the person whom I'd like to thank is an elder from Vuniva village, Mr. Jagnarayan, who has been very helpful to me in providing some very critical information of the people who worked on Wainunu and on David Whippy's plantation and how they escaped. So that's the other project. And very recently, another person who has been very helpful to me, who has told me that he is going to consult with the plantation owners in Tavuni and will send me probably 200 to 300 photos, and that will be then produced in the documentary movie. So those are the projects that is happening. So once again, thanks very much to all my viewers. My presentation yesterday was in Hindi. It was very well appreciated by more than 1,000 people. It has been shared by more than on 50 different platforms. I even had messages from some very high representatives from Bhartiye Janata Party in India, and even some candidates who are contesting the general election in India, and said, oh, this is such great work from a fifth generation Fiji Indian speaking in Hindi. So I have really appreciated that people from India have come on board. Some Indians living in Italy from Mauritius who still speak Hindi have contacted me and thanked me for the projects I am undertaking. So once again, Dhanbad, Namaste, Namaskaram, Sitaram, Jai Shri Ram. This is Pravind Kumar from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Born in Kumkum Naruku Ba, lived in many parts of Ba and Tavua. So this has been my research over the past few months. I'm going to do a major presentation probably on Christmas Day or New Year's Day, how one person sold the Girmitiyas, a person who had lost 2 legislative council elections in Fiji, but carried on to sell the Girmitiyas. So watch for that one. Thank you once again.